Hello, and thanks for joining me for another episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. If you heard about a church and cemetery way out in the countryside that was supposedly the scene of satanic rituals, would you go check it out? I sure would. And I did, just for you guys. Boot up the GPS on your phones and pray for good reception as we go lights out. My weekend, that began with a jaunt to Villisca and continued with a drive to Malvern, ended up with a side trip to Ottumwa, Iowa. Actually, it was outside Ottumwa. Way outside. Mars Hill Church and Cemetery is 7 miles southeast of Ottumwa, a 20-minute drive out of town on rutted gravel roads. But when the church was built in 1856, that bumpy white rock was one of the main roads going through south-central Iowa. According to the historic Mars Hill Church official website, Thomas Clark, a minister, and his wife Barbara arrived in the area in 1846. They traveled with their 8 children by riverboat up the Mississippi to Burlington, then by covered wagon to the Des Moines River. They arrived in the spring, when the river valley was under floodwaters, so they chose to settle on the rock bluff above the surging currents. The Clarks paid $63.50 for a little over 50 acres of land. Sadly, the youngest of the Clarks' children, 4-year-old John, died shortly after they arrived. It was Barbara Clark who donated a plot of land to the Baptists with the provision that they build a church and cemetery on it. History left its mark on Mars Hill Church. It was a station on the Underground Railroad. Slaves making their way north to freedom were hidden in the thick forest by day, then assembled at the church to continue their journey. John Brown, of Harper's Ferry fame, supposedly hid 2 wagon loads of escaped slaves at the church. When the Civil War broke out, 35 men of the congregation formed the 7th Iowa Cavalry in 1862 and left to serve in the war. During the war, the church was closed and reopened after the war. On September 13, 1974, Mars Hill Church was entered into the State of Iowa Register of Historic Places. In the late 1970s, occult activity surfaced in south-central Iowa, and unfortunately, Mars Hill Church was the site of some of these shenanigans. Reva Roop was the caretaker at the time. She's the great-granddaughter of Abraham Smock, the first minister at Mars Hill Church. In June of 1985, Reva found a mutilated black cat hanging over the church altar. Satanic crosses and symbols had been painted on the walls in blood. Historic tombstones in the cemetery were vandalized. Pews were stacked and set on fire in the church. Fortunately, the building itself didn't burn. Later, more vandals dragged the remaining pews out onto the lawn in front of the church, stacked them up, and set them on fire too. In 2006, arsonists set yet another fire, which nearly destroyed the old church. Luckily, many of the original logs were saved, and the church was rebuilt in 2008. The arsonists were caught and sentenced. This dark history has left its mark on the church in the minds of thrill-seekers. It's said that ritual masses are still held in the dark abandoned church, with pentagrams and other evidence left behind. The church and cemetery are also said to be haunted, both by the members of the congregation who are buried there, and by the ghosts of slaves who never made it to freedom. And to expand upon the supernatural aspect of the place, Mars Hill is a favorite spot for UFO hunters, with multiple sightings being reported in the area over the years. According to local lore, a mother had her baby baptized at the church, then promptly threw it off the nearby Crybaby Bridge, where its wails can still be heard. But even with all this spurious ghost lore, Mars Hill Church is still a peaceful spot. It holds the distinction of being the oldest log church in continuous use west of the Mississippi River. The church holds 3 services a year, as well as weddings and baptisms. One of these is the annual reunion dinner, held on the 2nd Saturday in June. The first reunion dinner was held in 1927, and has happened every year since. The cemetery is also historically interesting. There are veterans from every single American war buried here, including a fellow named John Donaldson. Donaldson was a Civil War veteran, recipient of a Congressional Medal of Honor during the war. His citation? For capture of the flag at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. Pretty badass. The directions to Mars Hill Church are fairly straightforward, and it was really easy to find, just a bear to actually get to with all the gravel roads. And it's in the middle of nowhere, yes, but it's not isolated. There's a cluster of houses right across the road. I got out of the car and had a wander around the outside of the church and through the cemetery. I'm standing at Mars Hill Church and Cemetery outside of Ottumwa, Iowa. And this is very, very interesting. The lore about this says that this cemetery has been used for occult practices. Hello, Bunny. There's little Bunny here. Let's see if I can get a picture of him. The Bunny doesn't mind hiding in the cemeteries. Hey, sweetie. It's a slightly overcast day. All right, it's really overcast. It's been raining off and on all day. But far from being a place of terror, this is a very pleasant little cemetery. And that little bunny is not at all happy with me talking. He looks like he's getting ready to bolt. Poor little thing. So in order to get to Mars Hill Cemetery and Church, it's about 10 miles or so over rough gravel roads, and it's been raining for a couple of days here. So the drive up here was also kind of muddy, and my little car was sliding in the mud, but we made it here. We made it here so that I could take pictures for you guys and talk about this pretty little cemetery. There are lots and lots of animal noises around. I heard a dog barking. There you go. I heard a cow lowing earlier. And lots of bird calls. So the lore about this cemetery is that there have been satanic practices here. And investigators have said that they've found traces of wax on gravestones, showing that candles have been lit on the gravestones and in aid of satanic rituals. But I haven't seen any of that yet. It's a very pretty little log church right in the middle of nowhere. I'm not entirely sure whether or not the church itself is haunted. Maybe it's just the cemetery. And it seems to be that the only reason the cemetery is considered to be haunted is because that there have been rituals performed here, and not due to any actual historical haunting. And here is a grave kind of by the tree line here. It looks like people are still visiting here. That's nice. The most recent date I saw here, the most recent death date I saw was May 2015. So yeah, people are still using this cemetery. And some people might find this weird, but that's why I like walking through cemeteries, is that these are all places for people to be remembered. Some place for people to come to remember their loved ones. But sometimes the decorations and the way of remembering people are so different. There's 2016. I just find it interesting that so many different people have so many different ways of remembering the ones who have gone before. You know, some people put flowers, some people put little stones with little sayings. Some people put quarters or pennies. Some people put dog tags of descendants. I saw a stone there for Jim Wood, and there was a dog tag on the stone for somebody named Justin Wood. So I'm just assuming that that is a descendant of Jim. And I just like these people all together, family members all together. And it's just a quiet way to remember them. 1923, gone but not forgotten. Miss Maggie, I hope you're not forgotten still. Lots and lots of little medallions that say veteran, U.S. veteran. There we go. So yet again, it's just a very, very peaceful cemetery in the middle of nowhere that maybe kids have come using this place for wild parties. And it's just gotten a reputation. I haven't seen any evidence of satanic activity at all. I hope there's none to find. Lots of very, very young folks buried here. So young they don't even have names. Poor little things. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this walk through the cemetery with me, listening to the birds calling. I think honestly what people are maybe mistaken for candle wax is actually bird poop. I haven't seen any candle wax on any of these stones. I've seen an awful lot of birdie poop. See, this is what I mean by the ways people memorialize their loved ones.
Here's a stone for Tim Hopwood, born in 1959, died in 2013. Wow, he was not very old. On the back of his stone, there's a little poem, and I would love to know who it was that wrote this. But the poem says, "Father of Kim and Danielle, we come to you in total despair with our car or truck that needs repair. You are the best mechanic in town when all the others have let us down. We appreciate all that you do to make our trucks and cars run like new. To us, you are the number one, the best mechanic, second to none." How sweet is that? Oh, look at that. Okay, here's a story. Here's a story. There is a stone here for There's a stone here for Wayne and Anna Mae Roop. Wayne was born in 1868 and died in 1914. I'm wondering, there's no veteran medal by his stone, but I'm wondering if he might not have been killed in World War I. But Anna Mae, his wife, was born in 1868, same as Wayne, but she lived until 1960. She outlived her husband by 56 years. Is that right? No, 46 years. Still, awful long time. And next to that, we have a very adorable little octagon-shaped stone of Nellie, daughter of A.W. and A. Roop. 1902. Aged 1 month, 11 days. So, I'm going to guess that poor little Nellie was the daughter of these folks here and lived only a short while. Of course, then again, next to her, there's Orrin Roop, who was born in 1898, 4 years before his sister, and lived until 1989. So that's a good long life. Okay, well, I am still in Iowa, so I am going to wrap this up and get in the car and go home, 'cause I am tired. Thank you very much for letting me wander around your cemetery. It's very beautiful, very peaceful. And I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining me for a visit to this out-of-the-way treasure in south central Iowa. In the next episode, we're going to a place that's not so peaceful. I'll take you to visit the infamous Sally House in Atchison, Kansas, the site of a very strange haunting, and a place where I learned a very hard lesson. Join me for a walk through a dangerous place the next time we go lights out.